this book one time that said this, quoted that, and I said, you guys are
Yes,
so
it seems to. There was a little bit of like what Zoom calls host, they call presenter, and so and then of course every time there's a software update, all the buttons get
what I heard today was, I had some real heartfelt comments that people said, and I just repeated them. Because I was the last one to speak, I could just leave it. Yeah, I was really, I felt really good about it because typically I try to do that in the normal meetings, and it's just so redundant. It was just so, people come up to me and just, thank you for that blessing, it was really great, thanks for.
We should do that more often. I mean, having the meetings elsewhere.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the October meeting of Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Heather, could you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Yes, Chair. Chair Saxon?
Here.
Vice Chair Lovell?
Yes.
Director Kuchin is excused. Director Hensley is excused. Director Keating?
He's en route.
Director Johnston? Director Plummer? We see him there. Director Settlemeyer?
Here.
Director Stout?
Here.
We do have.
Great, thank you. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? There was one that was made to the agenda that was emailed out last week, and that's on the Citizen Advisory Committee. We do have an action item on a approval of an applicant to serve on the committee, so that will be in item 6. Are there any other adjustments anybody has? Okay. All right. We now will move to public participation. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. And if anyone wishes to speak, I would please ask that you comply with that 3-minute limitation. So the first part of the public participation will be comments on an item that is on today's agenda. Again, on the published agenda that was sent out. So are there any members of the public online that wish to speak on the item that's on today's agenda? You'd raise your hand. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on an item on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none. The second portion of the public participation is to ask if there are any comments from the public on a topic that's not included on today's agenda. So is there anyone in the online that wishes to speak on an item? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on a topic that's not on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Are there any comments from any of the board members like to comment on any item of interest? Okay. It might be a quick meeting today. Next item is approval of the minutes from the September 11th, 2025 meeting. Is there a, before we get into a discussion, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure, I'd like to motion that we approve the minutes of September 11th, 2025, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion, changes, comments on the minutes as submitted? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of approving the September 11th meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
And approved. Thank you.
I was correct.
Chair, I'm
Yes.
so sorry. It's a point of information on this. Director Lovall's name is spelled incorrectly on section 4. That's all.
Put on my tab.
Okay. Well, the plugging will begin.
Yeah.
So we'll make those changes. Thank you for.
That's my uncle from Apollo 13. That's his.
That's why it doesn't.
Thanks for. I'd like now to move to Citizen Advisory Committee, and I'd like to recognize Kelly. Wood. Oh, okay.
So the meeting was on September 30th. We did have a new applicant to fill a public health position, which we're currently lacking. That's the last one we need to fill. We do have an applicant, and her name is Joe Roger. We all anonymously voted to pass on the application to the board. So I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but she's great. She has a very strong environmental background and education. I'm not sure if she's joined the meeting, but she was encouraged to do so, but not required. But we also discussed some outdoor burning window. That's kind of a struggle at the moment because of the outdoor fires, the wildfires. The windows shortened to October 15th. We talked about future topics, so Title 15 and Title 43. And also we were presented with the bylaws for the Citizen Advisory Committee, as well as orientational materials that are to review. But going forward, that's about it.
Any questions?
If I can, thank you, Evelina. Just to make one point of mention of one of the items that was discussed, as Evelina talked about, was the outdoor burning window for fall outdoor burning in the UGB, which is October 1st to October 31st. And there was a bit of a discussion with the CAC on if by rule there's any potential of adjusting that window to start at October 15th versus October 1st because of the what is year in after year, not a open start of October 1 because of fire concerns, and a reflection on if there's any potential opportunity for moving that burn window farther into November to provide that same opportunity. And so just want to make known to the board that was an item that the CAC was discussing about, and a reflection that I committed to carry forward to the board as a question that was had for consideration for the board.
So that might be a future board discussion. Well, thank you, Evelina, for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the advisory committee. Appreciate that. We have a application that's been submitted to appoint Joe Rogers to the advisory committee. That was in the board packet. I guess I would entertain a motion to appoint Joe Rogers to the advisory committee.
Chair, I move that we appoint Joe Rogers to the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Is there any discussion, questions?
Chair Howard, members of the board. So I know Joe Rogers. She works with Lane County Public Health. She is someone who has been very engaged with LRAPA through her work with Lane County Public Health and wildfire smoke engagement. In fact, early this year, as we presented to the board, LRAPA created a air quality index chart that had some health guidelines for parents on their children and how what kind of levels of play and activity is appropriate depending on that AQI, which has been a really great resource at Fire Safety Saturday just this last weekend. That was an item we shared out a lot. And Joe was a key component to getting us access to Dr. Ludke with Lane County Public Health for his review on that insight. And so I think she is would be a real advantageous component to the CAC.
Dylan had
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in briefly to say I know Joe Rogers personally, and I've worked with her in both personal and professional capacity, and I can't say enough good things about her work. I think we'd be really lucky to have her.
Thank you. Any other comments? It's been moved to second and seconded that we appoint Joe Rogers to the Citizen Advisory Committee. I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
That delay.
All right, and you'll communicate that
Yeah.
she's been appointed. Okay, great, thank you. All right, We'll move on to item 7, financial report. Christina?
Thank you. Well, there's not just a whole bunch to talk about on this report because we've just started the new fiscal year. This report is through the end of August. We don't turn around the previous month quite quick enough for ability to present September this month and that's normal. I'm just reminding everyone because it takes a while to close the books on a month before I'm ready to report on it. So this is through August, which is just 17% of the fiscal year that has elapsed. Oops, see a typo. There's a typo that I didn't see until just this moment. Under grant fund contingency, it's saying that we should be 100% through that for the year. That should say 17. I just probably hit a 1 instead of a 1.7, and I don't know what happened. But anyways, the only footnotes are related to personnel in the general fund and personnel in the special revenue fund or Title V fund. As we talked about last month, in July, it was a little bit elevated because of some vacation buyout, but it is leveling off and actually improving already. So I know in a couple more months, we're going to be well below the targeted goal. So we're at 16% spent for personnel services, and to be on target with the end of August would be at 17. So we're a little bit below, but we're so close that I've highlighted in red as something to keep a close eye on. And the Title V personnel is really close to the 17% also, but it's still under at 15%. It's yellow because it's not quite as close as the red one. And that's how the math worked out for my little formula when I highlight things yellow or red. And so there's a note for each of those down at the bottom. Does anybody have any questions about anything that's included in the August financial report? Okay, well, that's all I needed to let you guys know about that report. Before we move to the next little area, I do want to mention that the board approved us opening an LGIP account as a board designated account, and I have started the process of getting that account opened, but have not transferred money into it yet. I anticipate by the next meeting that will be complete.
Is there a motion to approve the August 2025 financial report?
Chair, I move approval of the financial report for August 2025.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions? If not, in favor of the approval of the August 2025 financial report, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Next,
Yeah.
were you done? Okay.
Great work, Christine.
Oh, thanks.
Yes, so Chair Howard, members of the board, so for our monthly status update on our federal grant programs, the numbers you see on that staff report indicate the updates of how much is remaining in the total grants spent to date and the drawdowns that's waiting through ASAP. I think something that's notable or relevant here in the context of the federal government shutdown that we have, I think a fast question that comes to mind is what's the status of the grants, and does the grant work need to stop, or can the grant work move forward? Because these are already allocated grants, we have access to the federal government's program called ASAP, which is where we draw down that money for reimbursement. That program is still open, the funding is still within that, and we still have ability to draw down on that because those funds were already allocated. So in regards to our targeted AirSHID grants, there's no need at this point to have any pause or adjustments to the work as followed. Another update that I'll share is Christina and myself, but mostly Christina. She's the one rowing the boat and I'm kind of steering it. So the work of rowing is the heavier work. Is knee-deep in an internal audit of our data as we prepare for the closeout of Targeted AirSHID Grant 1.0, which ends at the end of November, and we have 120 days to have all of our reporting requirements done and turned into the EPA. I'm grateful that we're going through the internal audit to make sure that we're well prepared to submit that grant, but it is a project.
Expect on the Airship Grant 1, there's a remaining balance of about 381,000. Do you expect to expend pretty much the rest of that?
That is our goal, and we would be very disappointed if there was any dollar left on the table by the closeout of that grant. A big motivator for us going through our internal audit right now is, one, to be prepared for the closeout of the grant, but to also more fully understand what that gap is between where we're at and the close of that grant, so we can assure that we're best allocating the funds in the different buckets that we have, and then start to tap into our second targeted airship grant to fully utilize that. So our expectation is that we're able to successfully burn down the rest of that remaining fund.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Has the shutdown affected the efforts to get an extension on the second grant? Is that paused as we're waiting for the government to reopen, or is that able to keep moving forward?
That is on pause until that reopens. So the grant EPA Region 10, so the Seattle office, is able to process that extension request. Initially, we requested a 2-year extension because we extended TAG 1.0 by 1 year, and we believe that we would need sort of a year for TAG 2.0 to account for that 1 year, but then another year in addition to that. The EPA feedback was that they would prefer that we take it 1 year at a time in our extension requests. So the budget that we provided to them was an adjusted budget for 2 years. So internal work for us is to readjust that budget for a 1-year extension. But they at the moment are unable to receive that update. And so that extension request is not moving forward until the federal government is reopened.
Okay, thank you.
We did make lots of progress on it prior to the government shutdown, though, as far as answering questions about the request and things. So I think once the government reopens and they catch up from being closed, it won't take very long, is my intuition on that.
I had a concern because the headquarters grants office, I've been told, is a staff of generally around 400 some odd folks, and currently they have a staff of about 18. And so they have a much larger workload than they have, and that created some initial anxiety of the extension request. But I learned that is something that EPA Region 10 will be able to do in-house without needing to send it to headquarters, where we would run into quite a larger workflow gap.
Any other questions on this topic? Thank you. All right, we will move on to item 9, which is fiscal year 27 local dues adoption.
Chair Howard, members of the board, before you in the staff report is our fiscal 27 partner dues. This was a topic of discussion at our September board meeting, where we presented to the board our methodology for updating the partner dues for the upcoming fiscal year. And the board agreed to review this in October to potentially consider and adopt those fees for the coming year. So the information you see here in the staff report is largely the same as what we had in the prior month, but the focus or the important details is that table there, which breaks down what the total partner support is to LRAPA, and then what that breakdown is across each partner, and the change from last year, which is a 3% increase following the CPI.
All right, well, I will entertain a motion that LRAPA approves the proposed FY 27 local dues allocation.
Chair, I move to adopt the fiscal year 27 partner dues as presented, totaling $218,856.63, and direct the executive director to notify all partner jurisdictions.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to put on the record that I will be voting against the partner dues calculation only because I think that the Lane County population formula should be more equitably representative of Lane County's entire population as a health and human services hub for our community. I think it's appropriate that Lane County partner dues be at least equal, if not significantly greater than the city of Eugene's, who are carrying clearly the lion's share. So I won't get in the way of this. I will just be I will be a respectful no vote, just to put on the record my heartburn about the allocation.
May I quickly explain what the current is, so everybody has a little context for what
Sure.
he's talking about? So currently we take it's in the little notes below that pink chart, but the population count for Lane County starts with the actual count, which is 382,000. And for the purpose of our dues calculation, each of the cities' populations are subtracted from that number. So the leftover is the number of people who are not represented already by the other partners. Just wanted to make sure everybody was able to digest my note, and if anybody had any questions about that, just for clarification. Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll take a roll call vote. You memorialize that?
Chair Saxon,
I'm voting aye.
Vice Chair Lovell,
Aye.
Director Keating,
Nay.
Director Johnston,
Aye.
Director Plummer,
Aye.
Director Settlemeyer,
Aye.
Director Stout.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion's adopted. Thank you. Thank you for preparing all the background information. And, maybe next year when we go through this again, we can maybe
Hash
in
that out.
advance explore that a little bit more detail. Okay. Thanks everyone for that. We'll move on to item 10, which is the smoke management season update.
Yeah, Chair Howard, members of the board, I'll start this and then I will ask Matt Sorensen, our public affairs manager, on a little bit of the outreach if he wants to share a bit on that. But the staff report here presented is something that I see as an annual update that I'll provide to the board, which reflects on, I think, more of a smoke management increase in the work that the agency is doing, particularly related to wildfire smoke, but also in regards to prescribed burning, which we're seeing more of an interest and a desire from many partners across the county to take advantage of ecological burning. And as this is an overall summary and review of how LRAPA is engaging on smoke management work and how we are communicating to the public, be it wildfire smoke related, outdoor burning related, or prescribed burning. What you'll see on the back end of the page, or the second half of it, is a breakdown of our AQI days from July to September 2025. Wildfire season can continue into October, and I think this year with seeing outdoor burning season not opening until October 10th, that's indicative. This year, though, in comparison to prior years, has been a relatively better year in regards to air quality. In 2024, we had Oregon saw the most amount of wildfire acreage burned. There was not as many acreages burned this year, and the smoke impacts to the Eugene-Springfield area was just 2 days of unhealthy for sensitive groups, which is that orange category. On the prescribed burning side of our smoke management, we did permit about 1,456 acres to burn across the Willamette Valley. As of the date of this report, which there has been more burns just in this week, there was about 18 acres or 6 units that have burned. To make clear that permitted 1,456 acres does not all get burned in a single year. Oftentimes there are lots that are seen one year that don't get burned and are carried over into the next year's application. And that's because the way ecological burning with LRAPA is done is we're prescriptive on where the wind's blowing before you can start that burn, as well as the resource allocations to manage that burn. And all of those moving parts can make it challenging for a burn to be successful. So of what's permitted, it's usually about 20% of that acreage actually ends up being burned. This year has been successful in the few burns that have taken place, and we have not had any smoke intrusions from those burns, I'm pleased to say. And then on the public outreach and communication, Matt, if you want to kind of speak to a little bit of some of our work has been doing to communicate with everybody.
Sure. Thank you, Travis. I think just in short is the biggest challenge in communicating about wildfire smoke is that most of us are happy to not think about it until it's thrust upon us. So we do try to do things proactively and get out there, but when your life is filled with a lot of other things and going on and you don't have a smoke intrusion, it's very easy to kind of be like, oh, okay, great, whatever. So the timing is really critical is when you get this information out. And so we happen to get out a newsletter, just happened to be the timing was 2 days before immigrant fire thrust itself into our valley here. And that was the first day that everyone became aware immigrant fire was even really occurring because it was a lightning strike. That's just is fortunate because then at that point, that resource had a lot of information about HEPA air filters, the air quality scale, things like that. And then we saw a lot bigger uptick in community members reaching out and requesting those resources, which we did actually make that AQI scale. We shared this many, many months ago in partnership with Lane County Public Health. Actually, Joe Rogers, who just joined the CAC, was the person in particular at Lane County Public Health I'd worked with to develop that asset. So otherwise, we do calls regularly with DEQ, the National Weather Service, Oregon Health Authority, basically to look as wildfires are occurring to see which parts of the state, and specifically in our case, Lane County, may be impacted by weather and smoke. And knocking on wood, this was a very mild wildfire season for Lane County, and hopefully we can continue to see that wildfire isn't quite as pronounced going forward, but time will tell.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Also, just mentioned here for outdoor burning program status that as of this report, the season was expected to be curtailed through October 15th, 2025, but we learned this morning, I believe, or yesterday,
It's not official yet.
that there's a intent to potentially move that forward a few days, depending on the rain that we'll be seeing later on this week. It's not often any longer that we see an October 1 start time for outdoor burn season, and this is a kind of common thing, at least since I've been with the organization. Haven't seen an October 1 start date for the fall outdoor burn season.
Can I interject a clarifying point? Right, okay, go ahead.
Either way, I just, one comment was, I appreciate the outreach. I think you guys are doing a great job. Could I also suggest that maybe there's a press release that goes out to the various news stations or otherwise whenever we might have a prescribed burn that's close by, or even up in Corvallis, that, you know, I don't think we can minimize the amount of panic that a lot of people have since 2020 in our population, and a simple, hey, there's going to be a prescribed burn tomorrow in Corvallis for X things. Wind is probably going to push some to the Willamette Valley. We would all, no pun intended, breathe easier, so knowing that, and I wouldn't get a dozen questions from family members. Nameless.
I would echo that. I don't know if there was a prescribed burn yesterday out by the old Hynix plant, but from my home, I saw a pretty big plume. And just saying with, backing up with Alan, it would be great if there was a news release or something that there was a planned prescribed burn out there. Cause I was almost ready to pick up the phone, and say, file a complaint or something. But I think it might help mitigate getting inundated with calls like, oh my gosh, is there a fire out there, and what's going on, type thing.
Yeah.
Especially, I would say, certainly within the urban growth boundaries of Eugene, Springfield, I think would be very helpful in the future.
I know it's not related exactly to wildfires, but just on a tangent. So thank you.
Yes, Howard, to kind of respond to that, I appreciate that perspective. And one of the things we talk about a lot with the prescribed burning and ecological burning is the social license to burn. And the way that you're able to maintain a social license to burn is through transparency and upfront notice. In our permit that we write for these ecological burns, we do have notification requirements. That's a little more focused on right around where the burn is going to be taking place, who lives closest to it, and what's most likely to be those potentially impacted by that smoke. And seasonally, we do have a coordinated between Lane County, LRAPA, and then City of Eugene, coordinated press release that sort of kicks off and announces the start of the year. And then when there are very visible places, like if there's a prescribed burn that's on the Coburg Hills, knowing that that's much more visible and that can create a lot of anxiety for folks. Those instances too is where in the past we have put in extra effort in such like a press release to assure that the public knows. And so that feedback is appreciated.
Well, especially I live in the kind of the southwest part of Eugene, so it's pretty heavily forested. And so anytime you see smoke, you know, it's like, okay.
What next? Yeah.
I mean, I moved from tornado country, so making that transition, but anyway, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I could add my voice to that. The last weekend of September, my wife and I were in Seattle for Mariners Dodgers. And it was nice. It was cool for me. For her.
How was the air up there?
The air was great up there. My mother-in-law called. She lives in county land, southeast Eugene. And she said that the air was choking them out. They had to stay inside. I'm surprised that it didn't reach the unhealthy category. I just did a cursory search on Firewise and was able to infer that there were 2 prescribed burns plus the smoke coming in from the wildfire. And I don't see that. I see it referenced in the September 29th AQI advisory and response, but it doesn't fall into the north of moderate category, which is curious that it prompted a call from my mother-in-law, which I encouraged her to call LRAPA. And she's like, oh, I'm talking to an LRAPA board member. So here we are.
I like the sheriff's mother-in-law. Hey, call the deputy.
Right. So I'm just adding my voice to the longing for more information on the front end. Can't do everything, but can't be perfect. But also I do have a question about that particular weekend. We have 8 monitoring stations around the county. Am I missing something that would or should or shouldn't have fallen into this unhealthy category?
Yeah, Director Keating, what you're seeing on those 2 days of unhealthy for sensitive group days, one of those is that day that I believe you're referring to, and that was from a northerly wind. We had some smoke. I was actually up in Washington that blew down our way, and then there was a second day where we had some smoke coming in from the south. On our prescribed burns, we have not had any AQI impacts from the prescribed burns because through our permitting process, we only allow those burns to take place when the wind direction is blowing in a way that smoke is not going to go to a sensitive receptor area of which the Eugene Springfield area is. And the amount of acreage that's being burned in these prescribed burns is usually like somewhere between 3 to maybe 15 acres, as opposed to when you have a wildfire where you have hundreds of acres burning at once. The amount of particulate matter that's generated from that has a larger impact on air quality. And I do not believe that there was any AQI impacts in the metro area from prescribed burns this year.
That was the clarifying point that I wanted to make. I think that you misspoke and said that there were 2 orange days for Springfield Eugene, but actually that was for Oak Ridge, and there were none in Springfield Eugene.
Yes, you're correct.
So just to clarify that and to ask, is that correct or is it a typo? I didn't know for sure.
No, that is correct.
One clarification I can make is that's for a 24-hour average. And so you could have some really high peaks, like where, for an hour it was horrible, but over the day it averaged out. So that chart's just a 24-hour
average.
I wonder if my colleagues would find it useful, and I'm sure it's in, and maybe they know better than I, and these maps have been shared where these 8 regulatory grade stations exist throughout throughout Lane County.
We're working on a newsletter right now, aren't we? We could add an article about that, maybe.
Would like selfies at each one, please.
Yeah, prove their existence. Matt, I think it was the weekend, the 28th and 29th of September.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, That one is as unfortunate as the Watch Duty app anyways, and I don't know if that's the same one you're using. They do list prescribed burns, but they also let them stay on, and you have to open it up and read the date it's there. So even though the burn happened 2 days earlier, it still was showing up, and someone might infer looking at it, oh, that's happening today.
Yeah.
So that's where Travis is speaking to the prescribed burns have not impacted Eugene. That the fire, the Moon Complex, which was south of us, the wind is typically northerly in our area. That particular day was a very strong southerly, and so that was all wildfire smoke that particular day that was blown into town. And we had a lot of people because the air quality did become pretty poor.
Right.
For a good part of the day. It was like kind of from like about 1 PM until the end of the day. So your mother-in-law was not seeing things. That was in fact a very poor air quality. But to Lance's point, because of the overall day grade, it hit a different, it registers for this scale.
Yeah.
Different.
Okay, thank you. And it is the Watch Duty app I'm referencing, not Firewise. I don't know why I misspoke there, but thanks for the clarification and thanks for the follow-up. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is absolutely our agency and my role, interest and desire is to try to be as proactive and communicate with as many people as possible about things like a planned fire, or when we know that something is impacting us like a wildfire, is to try to get that as far and wide as we can. So I'm in full agreement.
Purple air at my house, I think it was like about 180, which, it's not a regulatory sensor, but, it was in the unhealthy range for a few hours that day.
It looked like it from driving from north, you're coming into town, you could tell that there was
Exactly.
something happening.
Yep.
I just have a quick curiosity question. When you said that we had 1,400 acres or more burned like that, it was prescribed burning, and that's dictated by, weather patterns and wind and all that. How much notice do people who are waiting for a prescribed burn permission statement from LRAPA, how much notice do they have before they have to go out there with a torch and light it?
So we issue those on a seasonal basis. So once we issue them, they are good through November 1st. And we require notification to us that that burn is taking place. So it's a seasonal permit for them to conduct that burn, depending on what that prescripted wind direction may be. And then they have the resources available to that. And then every Monday, myself and Matt, we participate with the Rivers to Ridges group, where we go through who is planning to do a burn this week. Let's look at the forecast. Let's look at if it's going to be in prescription, yes, no, or otherwise. And that's also a place where they can do some resource coordination of, does someone have radios? We need radios, those kinds of conversations. And that's a great way for us to be informed of who's going to be conducting a burn for the week. We have an ability from a forecasting perspective to have our hand on, is this going to be a successful burn where smoke's going to stay away from town? That's been the approach for about 3 years now. This is the third year we've been doing that weekly Monday check-in with the group. And so far, I think that program has been successful.
But I will say, to speak to your question, is that so we issued the permit, so now it's in existence. So then when the groups see, oh, weather conditions are right, we have all the resources, they will still, because most often like, okay, let's see if the weather does what we really think. They will let us know, either text or email saying, hey, we are going to go out and we're going to attempt our test fire to just see, is it actually behaving the way we want? And if it is in prescription, then we're going to proceed and do the burn then.
Gotcha.
But it's so weather-based. They would love to be able to say, oh, we'll do it on Tuesday. And we'll
Sure.
just, so it's like they're really, because all the humans that have to come and all the resources, they're as just as on pins and needles as anyone else, going like, gosh, can we do it? Are we not? Is it all for naught? We all get out there, wind's not cooperating, we got to call it off. So it's really pretty much day of. They'll say, hey, we're going to attempt this. We'll do that. We'll say if it's in prescription, which it appears it is, proceed. And so then it happens. But what's interesting, and I did not know this, gentleman Spencer from BLM said they were burning, I think he was burning 10 acres or something of that nature. I said, oh gosh, how long will that take? And he goes, oh, about 6 minutes. So because it's grasslands, it's dry, it's ready to go. They've already done their perimeter burn, and now they just kind of like, and it just goes. So
That's not good.
that's a technical term.
Yeah, for the
so,
record,
yes.
Scientific term.
Well, I mean, LRAPA in the way we explained that is as close to a moving target as we can get.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're doing everything we can to mitigate all the wind direction, hassles, phone calls, impacts to everybody. So
And I've been in the room when someone has called Matt's cell phone the moment they were about to start the test fire, just to ask for clarification before they did. So, I mean, they're staying in really good communication with
great.
us.
Good job.
But it does present unique challenges in communicating as well to folks. It's, unique challenges.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, I just really appreciate all the work that LRAPA staff are doing on the prescribed burning front. I know it's a really sensitive issue and wildfire is a really emotional topic, but I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for everything we're doing at this agency to maintain that social license to burn, as I have a significant amount of colleagues who work in wildfire and restoration and know how important wildfire or prescribed burning is to keeping our community safe and to restoring our local ecology. So yeah, just want to do a +1 for everything everyone said, and just also a big appreciation to staff for working with that moving target and working with all these different partners and stakeholders on keep making sure that our lands are burning in a healthy way.
Thank you, Dylan. Any other comments? Great. Well, thanks for that update. That's very informative. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to item 11, Osprey Hollow air quality complaints. Travis?
Yeah, Chair Howard, members of the board. So the staff report before you is the Osprey Hollow air quality complaints. Calling it Osprey Hollow because there's Osprey Park that I think is kind of well central to the communities around that have connected with LRAPA. Matt Keating brought this up in our September meeting about residents who reported to him some of their concerns about dust and other odors that they're having in their neighborhoods. So this staff report is in response to that. From July 1 to October 1st of this year, LRAPA received 11 formal air quality complaints, 6 of those from unique complainants, expressing frustrations and concerns and experiences of odors during nighttime hours, fugitive dust and diesel exhaust from trucks traveling primarily up and down Delta Highway, the heavy truck traffic, and then environmental concerns regarding gravel extraction near Willamette and McKenzie River. The map that you see on that staff report actually should have some adjustments to that. The Wildish and Riverbend's property lines is a little bit more broken out than what is presented in that staff report, but those gives a sense of the surrounding businesses of Wildish Building Materials, Riverbend Materials, and Delta Sand and Gravel. That many of the complaints that we have identified these businesses as their source of their concerns. Those 3 businesses are on general ACDPs. Wildish is on 2 standards ACDPs and a general ACDP. Riverbend and Delta Sand and Gravel, or Riverbend's on a general, Delta Sand and Gravel are on standards.
Sorry, ACDP is what?
So an ACDP is an air contaminant discharge permit, and that's essentially a state level permit. And then another nuance here that's important is what's called the general ACDP. So a general is a permit that LRAPA will issue that's on a 10-year cycle, and then we will assign sources to that permit. An example that helps a general ACDP kind of click in place is if you think of gasoline dispensing facilities, which we call GDFs, that's a general permit because the work that they're doing in dispensing the gasoline is essentially the same and it's all regulated the same. So we have a general permit and folks are assigned to that. So that's what a general ACDP is. And then the standard is essentially a general, just state level permit. So we have been responsive to these complaints throughout the summer. We have been out multiple instances to visit both with the sources as well as the residents. And our investigation has essentially come back that the underground quarry operations minimize some of that ground level dust, which has been a concern that residents have expressed. And I think most of the dust concerns come from the heavy truck traffic up and down Delta Highway and the need to cover those trucks more so than what our inspectors have observed. From a regulatory framework, the stake that LRAPA has on this issue is through our Title 48, which is fugitive emissions, essentially meaning how emissions may be moving across one property to the next. Title 37, which is under those state permits, whether it's a standard or a general. And then there's a Title 49, which is a nuisance provision, which can allow the source to voluntarily move into a best work practice agreement to address the issue. So current efforts and actions that are underway is we're reviewing fugitive dust control plans. So essentially evaluating the facility's emission plans and focusing on the requirement that they cover the load traffic, which I think will have go a long way in helping to reduce one of the main concerns, which is the amount of dust that residents are experiencing from trucks driving up and down Delta Highway. Also, by documenting the complaints, understanding the scope of how many individuals or residents in the communities are affected in this way is important for us. That's why we always value complaints being provided to us, because that is data that we can stand on and look at in these decision-making process or informing any decision or engagements we have with the source, as well as then maintaining stakeholder engagement, which is between both the residents as well as the businesses. I see LRAPA as a third party central facilitator of this conversation to find a way through our regulatory authority to assure that we're collaborating and finding progress when concerns are raised and identified. So this is a option that was brought to the board in response to Matt Keating's request in September. Also, we have some public participants from both sources and I think some residents here in the room as well who are interested in this discussion with the board. So that's the information to share for board review.
Any questions, comments?
Just quickly, just underscoring my gratitude for staff taking action as requested at our last board meeting. I greatly appreciate the presentation and the due diligence. I still have concerns about the dust and debris from uncovered or inadequately covered truckloads. How to rectify that is focusing on truckload covering requirements. Does that mean more trips with less of a load? Or I'm fuzzy on what that means.
Yeah.
And I remain concerned that the quote, the source of these odors is unclear.
So on the source of the odors, where that is unclear is when we look at some of the like asphalt matching and the timelines from the reporting requirements that we have for the source to tell us what their activities are. And when we align that with the time that complaints of odors have been reported, there's not an alignment that gives us confidence that perhaps those two items are related. From a dust perspective, our observations have been that there would be good benefit of having a conversation and emphasizing with the sources the need and importance of when trucks are going up and down Delta Highway or otherwise, that they are assuring that those truckloads are covered. And I think that is a place of improvement that we can see. I also mentioned that Wildish, Riverbend, and Delta Sand and Gravel have been engaged in cooperative on this issue with us and our inspectors, as well as just in general oversight of the permits that they have with us.
Thank you. I'll add that Wildish reached out to me after our last meeting and invited me on a tour, which I expressed that both my boss and I would be very interested in taking you up on said tour. So I'll report back to LRAPA after we do that tour. So I really appreciate their ability to bridge that gap as well and inform it and educate. On the inform and education and engagement piece, what has LRAPA staff, what's the engagement been like with the community? Because I hear the engagement between the aforementioned businesses. I hear the engagement with those who've made the complaint. Has there been any engagement or any plan to engage with the neighborhood broadly who might not be complainants, but who might fall in a close proximity?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Matt. And we have been engaged with the complaints as we've received them, engaged with the sources. And just today, in an operation meeting we had this morning, plans to reach out to the OHA and make contact with them to continue this conversation further. And then, Max, did you have a note that you wanted to add?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Travis. I just wanted to address Director Keating, Councilor Keating's comments on just the notion of covering all loads that are traveling up and down North Delta Highway. The standard in Title 48 fugitive emissions requires reasonable precautions to prevent particulate matter from becoming airborne. So the idea there is that, if the load is like saturated and wet, it's not reasonable for them to have to cover it. it's reasonable if it is dusty that they would cover it. So it's the precautions to prevent it from becoming airborne. So, and it has to be reasonable. You can't just expect someone to stand there and just water 24 hours a day. It's periodically they dust, use dust suppression on roads and prevent track out and that kind of thing. So just a point of clarification.
Thank you. Thank you. So it notes in here that the businesses have demonstrated responsiveness to the agency's recommendations. Has that responsiveness translated to a decline in the number of complaints? And maybe it's difficult to answer that question because I don't want to diminish it, but it's a relatively small number. You can't do a detailed scientific analysis with 11 complaints, but are we continuing to see, that's what I'm trying to ask is, are we continuing to receive complaints on this even after some of our industry partners have been responsive to LRAPA's recommendations?
Yeah, thanks, Director. Like I would say that engagement is still like ongoing.
Okay.
It's not something that I'd say that the conversation is necessarily over. One of the items, kind of as Max mentioned, as we start to get into the wetter season, I think some of the dust is less prevalent, but then every year, as things dry out and that dust becomes more of an opportunity, this is a awareness to us, and that's the value of the engagement of the community, is raising a hand and asking for attention, awareness to this issue so we can assure and inspect and enforce our environmental responsibility, or enforce the source's environmental responsibility to meet that need to cover their loads when appropriate. And so all to say is it's not a done conversation.
And are we still receiving complaints on a regular basis on this? Or
I
is that-
couldn't speak to the most recent complaint that we have, but it's not a resolved issue at this point.
Okay.
Wednesday. The 8th is a Wednesday.
So
Yesterday, right?
I have a question on the background information, third bullet. It's stated heavy truck traffic on Delta Highway through residential areas. Are the trucks actually going through residential areas or adjacent? And if it's going through residential areas, is there an opportunity? I'm not sure how the traffic works up there for trucks to avoid traveling through residential areas?
So Delta Highway goes through adjacent to the Nines neighborhood, and there's a new complex, an apartment complex that's being built on the other side of Delta Highway where there are some residential properties. So I think that the term through residential neighborhood is maybe appropriate. And is there another opportunity for a different route? None that we've identified.
Okay.
Sure. I'd like to add to your comment. Thanks for all the other comments. The comments are really great from the directors, and I think we're doing what we can. But I think your comment about heavy truck traffic through residential neighborhoods, we have to remind ourselves that these are through newly developed residential neighborhoods. I mean, I remember as a kid, I would swim in some of those ponds there, and you couldn't see a house within 1.5 miles of that area. And, because our urban growth boundary is very limited within Lane County, we have only so much property of which we can develop. So as a county and a municipality going forward, we're going to continue to have these kind of abutments and impacts because of established mining and workable businesses that have been there for decades and generations and will continue to be there. Probably, I would suspect, wow, this has probably got 100 years worth of life left on that mine. And we're going to have to let people be aware of that. Part of living in this area is going to come with some impacts that are going to be greater felt than anyone saying, like, Howard's neighborhood, for example. So, I want to also point out too that we have to kind of balance our response with a minority majority kind of approach. We're seeing a majority of our industries who have been here for, like I said, decades, are trying to keep their industry standards and the way that they operate to a higher degree of environmental check that they keep continuing. Every year we have more and more of those, as we can see, and they keep abiding by those in reference to the Goal 5 and Goal 11 goals that the state has. But also too, we have to remember that a minority of people that decide to live close to those operations, and like I said, Mike said there's 11 complaints. That's not a lot of complaints, but we have to kind of buffer the way we respond to that, I think, as a board. I mean, if I decided to live right next door to Weyerhaeuser, for example, on 42nd Street, I would expect that I would have some noise, some light pollution, and maybe some occasional smells coming from that black liquor tank, right? But that business is necessary, and it's been there for 80 some years. So there has to be some degree of perspective and and consideration to the essential businesses that we need in this area based on the housing limitation that we have for property. And we're going to keep running up against that. So I want to make sure that the board is aware that this is not a problem that's going to go away, nor do I believe it's going to be fixed, because we need rock and gravel to build with. Otherwise, we can't build. It's the same problem we ran into as the Board of County Commissioners with the Hazel Del Quarry mine. Okay, that we need gravel in that area to have Highway 58 open in case of a landslide or snow events or those kinds of things. And just because that mine was approved to operate there doesn't mean it's going to operate tomorrow. But as a quasi judicial board, they met all of the industry quality standards that would permit them to operate the property as they saw fit and wanted to. Same with these three mining operations. They have rigid control standards that they continually have to meet, so legally they can operate there. And I don't feel as a board we need to come against them for the sake of, I would hate to say this publicly, but I'm going to, as a minority complaint, to badger them not being able to comply with the rigid state standards that they have to comply with. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
I would just submit respectfully to my friend and colleague that one person's rigid control is another person's regulatory authority for the betterment and the health of our entire community. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Commissioner, but I think what I'm hearing feels like some advocacy for protecting our UGB and building up and not out. That might be an encouraging.
I'd love to have F2 lands have built on it, interface lands, but we have all kinds of property to do that
I
as
think we can
well.
find compromise and on a larger at another date. So I just want to correct for the record. We are a regulatory board, and I take these complaints seriously, whether they be 1, 11, or 511. I think these complaints are valid, and I greatly appreciate the fact-finding mission and collaborative work, both of the businesses, of our adjacent agencies. I'm intrigued and interested in the OHA conversation and how that fact-finding throughout the community might develop or might educate and inform. And I greatly appreciate the 11 community members who took the time to complain. It is not exactly like we are a 911 or even a 988 model. Unless you know what LRAPA even stands for. The acronym is Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. If you're just new to the community, you might even ask the question, what is the LRAPA? So we are not the most accessible agency to receive complaints. We are doing a much better job than when I first started as a board member. And that is a testament to this board's engagement, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, and is a testament to our staff's diligent and incredibly efficient and educated work. And part of that is the engagement with our business and industry partners. Part of it is the engagement with our neighboring agencies. And certainly a great part of it is the engagement of the community members who took time to educate and inform us and make the complaints. So I thank them, and I thank you all for listening to my pontification.
Dylan's got a question too.
Yeah, I just want to interject though. I think this is an example of past land use zoning decisions that we're having to live with, where you have an industry, we can take Baxter, for instance, when it started operation, it was not near any residential areas, and zoning decisions allowed residential to go into next to an industry that everybody knew was using some pretty toxic materials. And so we're dealing with that legacy. And you can look all around the country and see thousands of examples of bad zoning decisions. And the residents unknowingly moving next to facilities like that, having to bear the consequences, even though the facility may technically be in compliance with all the environmental regulations. Just because you do that doesn't mean that you're not emitting materials that could be hazardous to your health. So it's that legacy problem. Hopefully we don't create new legacy problems by allowing incompatible uses like the zoning decision in Oak Ridge, which some of us are most definitely opposed to allowing that quarry to basically decimate Oak Ridge and the businesses that they're trying to create there with outdoor recreation. Dylan.
Yeah, I'll keep my statement brief, but I just want to applaud Councillor Keating's remarks and voice my appreciation to all the community members who complained, and just remind all of all my colleagues on LRAPA board that our responsibility are to Blaine residents and not to the corporate polluters that we're here to regulate. Thank you.
Okay. Just briefly, Chair. Is there, I deal with a lot of trucks in my own business. If I want to add a tarp to my truck that I'm ordering, it's usually costs me about $100 per truckload. Is there any indication of the financial impact that additional tarping or any other prospective solutions is going to make to our sand and gravel partners there? I just want to make sure on the record we know what that financial impact is going to be.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Stout. Will say that for one, we already have requirements in our permits that those loads are covered. So any assuring that they understand that commitment and the financial reflections on that is something that I think has already come to pass, and this wouldn't be a new item. I'll also say that I really appreciate the perspective, which is wanting to assure that from an economic perspective, we're allowing growth in our community, which I think is very important, but at the same time, also recognizing where we're hearing from community members that maybe there is some change or some adjustment or how things might be able to done differently to collaborate and find a better solution. I'm grateful that from both engagement with the businesses, it's been productive and engaged, as well as with the community members, it's been positive as well. And so it's in that space of our recognition being there can be more attention provided to how well loads are being covered before they drive up and down Delta Highway, particularly in the summer when we don't have a lot of moisture and the dust is more common. I think that that's a reasonable role for LRAPA and our authority, is to have a conversation with our permit holders and saying, this is something that we would like you to do, and we would be grateful if you could commit to it.
Good, thank you.
Most of the, I don't know about all the trucks that different businesses, but I know Wildish, I've seen most of their dump trucks I've seen have those, things that they slide over, so they've already made that investment. It's just a matter of doing it.
Right.
Okay, anything else on this topic?
One last question, Chair. Sorry. Do we
Yes.
have any measurable data that we can gather from this discussion rather than more anecdotal?
The only objective data that we have is the complaints that we have received in the location and what that they are reporting in that complaint. But as far as monitoring observations or data in that perspective that we can look at, we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good discussion. We'll move on to item 12, Director's Report, guys.
Yes, Chair Howard, members of the board. As always, this is designed to be if you read one page out of this whole report, the executive highlight page tries to capture all that's within that. I think that September was a good day as far as air quality, or good month, I should say, with predominantly good air quality across the county. We had 3 separate air quality advisories issued in September. Another item that was of big interest to the community was our indirect source construction permit, which we engaged with the board last month on. We did issue that permit in September. We had over 300 public comments and a number of emails that were sent directly to me or addressed to the board. I'm really actually proud of the process of the indirect source permit. So to give a narrative of how this permit went from my perspective is Title 20 is a carbon monoxide and lead regulatory title, because that's the concern of air pollutants. It was established in the 1970s, most recently updated in the 1990s. From an expectation of CO impact from the e-commerce facility going in, LRAPA did not have a concern for CO. The only CO monitor in the state of Oregon is up in Portland, where they have much more traffic, and they do not have a CO issue in regards to the NACs. So we had an initial permit to provide this indirect source construction permit to the e-commerce facility. Through the public engagement process, we had a lot of public engagement, and they asked for a couple things. The first was for LRAPA to expand the scope of our reflection on regulatory oversight from just the commuter parking lot to the entire parking lot of the fleet, which we were responsive to in those public comments. And with that, we were able to engage the source with comments asking for things like EV commitments or CO modeling, and engaging with the source. Their outcome or their preferred approach was to make some EV commitments. And so the permit was issued, improved upon, based off that public process and the public feedback, to have by year 10, it will scale through time, but by year 10, 70% of their fleet to be electric fleet. And I see that as a real positive swing from what was a permit that was a, you can go ahead and put this in, to you can go ahead and put this in, but now we have some EV commitments which are more environmentally protected from the air perspective. So I'm very proud of how that went over the month of July through September. We talked a bit about some of the prescribed burning already, so I won't belabor that. I will mention here that not quite in the staff report, but I did visit the National Association of Clean Air Agencies fall meeting. I was actually in Washington, D.C. yesterday for this. The EPA is continuing to make some federal changes from the framework that we, from a state perspective and a local perspective, use and follow. And the EPA in the room made clear that 2027 or 2026 is going to continue to see more rapid changes from a federal regulatory framework. From a budgetary finance perspective, aside from the federal government shutdown, all signs pointed to legislative support for what's called categorical grants, which LRAPA receives about $350,000 a year in these non-competitive categorical grants. And the perspective from Congress is that's a funding stream that they see as valuable and something that they want to continue on and carry forward, which is another insight that was shared at the NACA meeting recently. So positive news in that regard. And we also did a fair amount of public engagement in September, such as the September block party, and then not in September, but more recently, I guess it was in September, the Jerry Fire Safety Saturday, where Matt and I participated with our booth and had, was it about, you said, Matt, 240 interactions from the booth next to us where they were keeping head count. We were not keeping head count, but they were, and they report 240 kind of visits of folks to their booth. So good engagement there. Beyond that, I'm happy to take comments or provide clarification.
Comments? Well, I think, as always, I think Matt and the team, really do an outstanding job in outreach and, letting people know what LRAPA does and all that. So it's a big difference from when I first came on the board about 5 years ago. So I think the amount of engagement is just amazing. So appreciate all the work.
We have a different culture just since I've been here. I mean, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I noticed in this update, some of the database enhancements that we've been making. Could you just refresh us on what LRAPA is undertaking there? I know it's not the sexiest topic of database updates, but I think it's important.
Yes, no, I agree. It is very important. So we have a database called LINFO, which stands for LRAPA Info. So this is, yes, well, I think it's apt. We like it. This is a database that's been in development for a number of years with Lane Council of Governments as the developer who is putting that together. This year we put permit information into our database, and then recently this year we expanded a module for asbestos. So now we're loading more of our asbestos information into this database, which makes it easier to pull reports out of it for board development, also to get some insights on whatever the question may be. We're wanting to add an enforcement module next to that. We also added last year in 2024 a complaint module to it. At the moment, progress on developing Linfo has slowed. The developer hired by LCOG retired, and they have not yet replaced that individual. So the current work in progress is underway to move the database and the SQL server to create basically a GitHub that LRAPA has access to, so we can contract our own developer who can then engage and start to make more progress on improving Linfo and updating it to meet our needs better. I think that there's more growth on the database to fully support the organization organizationally as opposed to just in specific fine programs. But in time, we will have Linfo at a place where all of our data is in there and it's much easier to pull information out, as opposed to we can be some of other filing, which is still kind of paper and outdated in that regard.
So the effort has been to essentially make us less dependent on LCOG and allow LRAPA to engage directly with contractors who can move this project forward.
Yes, I want to express appreciation to LCOG in helping us to get us to where we were at. And even more recently, they underwent a kind of a fundamental 3.0 upgrading of the framework to allow us to more easily make some of these additions like the asbestos module and the complaint module last year. But I recognize that having a developer who's been very helpful and useful at an organization that's outside of our own, and then when that retirement takes place, that has an impact on our ability to further that, would be better for us to have a little bit more direct control. So getting all of that data onto a GitHub that's our access point to where we can solicit and find that contractor ourselves, I think will be a faster, more effective approach.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Travis? Okay, well, that concludes our agenda items. So did you have a question?
Travis, do you want to, oh, you're going.
Yes, excuse me, I did space on this. Thank you for the reminder, Rochelle, grabbing that one. So something that will be coming up in November, we will be having an executive session for my review before the board. We have a staff survey underway, and then there will be some outreach to the board to receive your input through a form. And Rochelle, do you want to perhaps elaborate a little bit more on that process?
So the staff survey went out last week. We kind of redid it a little bit to really focus on our culture and other things around the executive director position. So I'm expecting that to be done this Friday, and that next week I'm going to summarize those results early in the week, and then I will be sending those out to the board along with a performance review form for you all to fill out, and you will have about 3 weeks to get those back to me, and then we'll summarize all of that and prepare for the evaluation, which is at the next board meeting on the 15th.
Thank you.
I was gonna say on those lines, I would hope that we would have 100% participation from the directors on that performance review. I think that last year we did not, and I view it as a pretty important function of, you know, Travis is our employee. So that would be my hope, is that all of us take the time to fill that out and participate in it.
I will add, if there, I'll be sending out a form. I'll make it as easy as possible. Do fillable or whatever, but if there's a different way that you want to provide feedback, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to meet with anybody. However you want to get that feedback, I'm happy to do that.
Just one comment is that the city of Springfield has undergone a tremendous change in how they're doing reviews of the different personnel at the city, and I've been very happy with it. I'm sure they would welcome any inquiries into how that process happened. So I've been very privileged in participating in that new method. So that's all.
Thank you. Anything else?
And Howard, I'll
Yes.
just share that I am genuinely interested in the feedback of the board. I am continue to be very grateful and appreciative of the trust, particularly at someone as early in my career as I am, for the responsibility that's been given me. I see LRAPA as a wonderful opportunity to move the needle in a positive direction that aligns with my kind of deeper values of public service and environmental protection. So I'm grateful for that. But I really do value feedback, and I take feedback and I try to pivot as best I can on that. So I am grateful for whatever reflections, positive or otherwise, that you may have.
Okay, anything else? Well, on that note, we'll stand in adjournment. Thanks, everybody. Give back some of your afternoon.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, Steve did. Yeah.
And you.
I told him that,
Yeah.
yeah, 24 hours potentially.